A very good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here on time. I welcome you all to this another panel discussion of Spear India COVID-19 Academy. Spear India COVID-19 Academy is a joint capacity building initiative of WHO, UNICEF, and HCL Foundation. And today, the Academy brings to you a very special panel discussion on children of migrants, what to be mindful of. This is in a partnership with CRY that we are having this panel discussion. So, in total, as we know, there are 13.9 crore migrant workers in the country as per the census of 2011. The numbers are very much higher today. Indian cities rely mostly on this vast workforce, which are drawn from the rest of the country. Laborers who move in search of opportunity and often leave their families behind for months or years. India's tens of millions of internal migrants had no time to get home when this lockdown post COVID was announced. The barefoot migration during this entire lockdown, which is estimated by the government of India, is between 5 to 6 lakh. The children of the migrant population, who their future are really in a grave danger. So, what happens to their education, access to health services, and overall safety? Today's panel discussion will cover the unique challenges and hardship these children are facing and have been facing, and what are the other challenges which already lies ahead of them. To to have the take the discussion forward, we have a very eminent panelist with us. So I would like to introduce our first panelist for the session today, who is Katyayani Chamraj. She's executive trustee of Civic Bangalore. Katyayani has also been a freelance journalist for 33 years, writing on development issues, mainly for Deccan Herald. And with Civic Bangalore, she has been executive trustee for since 2005, working towards better urban governance, helping the urban poor get their right to food, health, education, housing, and social security. Mrs. Chamraj has also been given the PUCL Journalism for Human Rights Award in 1998 and Bangalorean of the Year Award in 2015 by Nama Bangalore Foundation. So I welcome you, ma'am, today to this discussion. We have another panelist who is Divya Ravindranath. She is currently researcher based at Indian Institute of Human Settlements, that's in Bangalore. Her current research work focuses on the intersection of informal labor, gender, and health. She is particularly interested in studying reproductive health, child health, and access to healthcare among migrant workers at informal work sites. Welcome, Divya, to this discussion. We have also Saurabh Jain, who is Vice President Paytm. He's heading the Paytm Build for India program and has been playing an active role in startup products and developer relations and social impact with Paytm. Saurabh has also managed the relationship with various industry bodies, including NASCOM, CII, FICCI, PhD, CCI, ASSOCHAM, etc. Is also founder of Fundu Labs, which believes in the motto "Happy Kids Learn More." It's an open education project. So, welcome, Saurabh. We're looking forward to hear from you. We have Divya Shafila, another panelist, who is Associate Director of World Vision India. She is currently heading Bihar and Jharkhand Program Monitoring Office of World Vision. She has experience working on maternal and child protection, water and soil conservation in the states of Bihar, Jharkhand, Madhya Pradesh, and Maharashtra. She has been the part of disaster response of flood in India and Rohingya refugees, tsunami, and earthquake in Bangladesh, Indonesia, and Myanmar, respectively. Welcome, Divya. We have Vikrant Mahajan, who is CEO of Spear India. Vikrant has 24 years of professional experience at interagency policy level and frontline humanitarian action with government, UN, corporations, CSOs, and armed forces in diverse contexts. He has led multi-stakeholder coordination of multi-sector response to more than 100 disasters. He's a strong advocate of protection response in emergencies, especially for most vulnerable groups, child protection in emergencies, standards, multi-stakeholder coordination, and collective accountability to affected and population at risk. Welcome, Vikrant, to this discussion. We have Manjeet Kaur Bal. She is a team leader of Samarth Charitable Trust, working with vulnerable communities of Chhattisgarh in 11 districts. Her area of expertise is the migration areas and specialization in working with children of migrants for their education improvement. Also, for the education improvement, learning and migration programs. Welcome, ma'am, to this panel discussion. And today we have our moderator, who is Priyan. She's Director, West India, CRI, a postgraduate diploma holder in early childhood care and education from Sophia College Polytechnic. Priyan began her career with ORG Mark, designing market research projects with children for brands like Colgate, Palmolive, and Godrej Foods. She joined CRI in 2000 to lead the resource generation team in West, and in 2005, she set out to establish the marketing function for CRI America. She came back to India in 2010 and took up a current role of Director of West. Her passion mostly lies in unlocking people's potential to take transformative action that will deliver impact for marginalized children and communities. So with this, I very welcome to everyone today. And Priyan, I hand it over to you to take forward the session.
Thank you so much, Navida. And thank you, Sphere India, for organizing this webinar series and for partnering with CRI on it. The topics selected are certainly those that need visibility. And I know the discussions thus far have been quite enlightening. Very warm welcome to all the panelists and to all audience members from across India who have made time for this session. What we will be talking about today is linked to something that, quite frankly, has been on everyone's minds, and that is India's migrants. It needs continued attention, particularly those unique issues and challenges that are being faced by children of migrants. So when the lockdown happened, millions of India's internal migrants had no time to get home. That led to those extremely heartbreaking images that we all saw on the news of people trying to get back to their small villages and their small towns and villages in any way possible and suffering terribly on the way. What has possibly been slightly less talked about are the children of the migration population who actually look into quite a grave future along with their families. What we have observed across our programs in rural India is that, so there are a set of children who were left back in their villages when one or both parents migrated, whose families may not have been able to return at all. We have one young girl called Amita, who's part of our adolescent girls group in a program we have in Varta, Maharashtra. She lives with her uncle and aunt, and she wrote a really moving essay recently where she shares that her family is without wages, without money, without food, without water, and actually still has miles to travel to reach home from Mumbai. But even for migrants who have managed to come back to their villages, they face one, serious discrimination. They have no work or livelihood options in front of them. And that's why they left their villages in the first place. Hunger is a critical issue, and food intake by adults and children has diminished drastically. Malnutrition levels of children have increased. With the healthcare system already struggling to meet the healthcare needs of the population in this situation, it's quite likely that migrant families are at higher health risks and neglect by the system. We all know education of children has been completely disrupted. Dropouts is highly imminent for the children, and the likelihood that they will get pulled into full-time labor is extremely high, as is the risk of child marriage and being trafficked by agents, and we're already seeing this across our programs. So over the past few months, CRI partners in 17 states, that's where we exist, have been doing what they can to reach out to migrant workers and their children during the lockdown period. Just in terms of relief, we've already provided dry rations to thousands of migrant families and workers. We supported panchayats in setting up quarantine centers and also trying to integrate these families back into the community. The other things we have started to do and will continue to do across our programs to build really resilience in these families and children are certainly advocate with local administration to provide work under Manrega. and help families get the relevant documents, enable them to access rations, receive cash assistance, access other social security schemes. So even though the core of our work is about children, we have to address these larger level issues. But for children specifically, some of the things that CRY is also looking at focusing on is most certainly trying to get children back into school or some kind of education. And this is going to be a safe space for children, providing remedial support to children through online means and frankly, other innovative methods, because not everyone is going to have access to digital platforms and digital options. Certainly on the health and nutrition front, we've got to track immunization of children and pregnant women. We have to track SAM and MAM children. We have to ensure SAM children are referred to NRCs, tracking distribution of THR to pregnant and lactating mothers, and also trying to create that protective environment for children, which includes advocacy with CWC, with Childline for any child violation cases. There's so much to do because this pandemic has, quite frankly, set us back a number of years. But like me, I'm sure the audience would like to get a perspective from each of our panelists. So to start with, I would love to hear from Divya Ravindranath, who I believe will be focusing a great deal on children's health and nutrition in her address. Just before I hand it over to you, Divya, I just would urge all panelists to not go beyond about 10 minutes because we do need some time to address audience questions. So over to you, Divya.
Hi, it's raining very heavily here. So sorry in case my internet gets a little glitchy. I'm letting you know in advance. So a lot of my research has been at work sites where migrant workers work, in particular construction sites, a little bit of work with domestic workers as well. One of the studies that we did suggested that approximately 50% of children were underweight, about 40% of children were stunted, and 22% were wasted. Now, these are extremely high numbers if you look at a population. And then, we started looking at what could be the causes of some of these, problems. One of the largest problems in the construction sector, for example, is the kind of exposure to dust, cement, and all the other, chemicals, paint that children are exposed to, especially when they are much younger because they are with the mother at the site when she's working. So, very often the mother will, make a temporary doula or something like that and have the baby right next to her so that she can feed the baby from time to time. These have great health implications for the child right from from the time the child is an infant. One of the things that we've been trying to work around is to try and understand how social protection measures can be reached out to these families so that children can have access to better health conditions, better nutrition, and so on. So if you think about it, when we talk about undernutrition, we start from 0 to 5. That's the conversation. But very often this begins right from the stage of pregnancy. And one would say, why talk about a woman only as in terms of her reproductive health? We need to go back to adolescence. And then, we're just going back into the whole circle about how each stage, so the life cycle approach in some sense. So when the woman is pregnant, she needs access to nutritious food, which our ICDS systems, it provides in many places and is very effective. It doesn't in many other places, but the system exists. But in the case of migrant workers, the biggest problem is that they don't belong anywhere because when they're in the city, they don't have access to any of these services because they're at work sites. These work sites are scattered across the city. So they don't end up having access to a single point that they can go to. And at the same time, they don't have access to the same services in the villages, though they are, legally supposed to get it because they're in the city. So having these services back home in the village has very little advantage for these workers. And when they're in the city, one thing to also note is there's a big difference in the way different sectors are organized. So construction workers, for example, migrate from not only from the village to the city, but also within the city multiple times because they go from one construction site to another. So there's constant mobility. And in circumstances like that, one of the questions that is very difficult to address, and I know like a lot of us critique it, but also when we want to start thinking about how can we address it, one of the big challenges is that because of this very high mobility, it becomes extremely difficult to track parents and as a result, their children. So vaccination records are incomplete. Sometimes parents don't carry these vaccination records. So most children have not received vaccination beyond the first doses that they're supposed to get right at birth. If the child is born in an institutional setting, very often the childbirth happens at home or at the construction site or at the work site. So some of these very basic challenges continue to remain. In the absence of any kind of social protection measures, the mother and the child are equally impacted. And the other thing we also need to start thinking about is what are the best ways to sort of deliver any kind of social protection measures to these migrant workers. And in India, we have all kinds of migrants. So we have the single male migrant, we have family migrants, we have women who migrate with their children. And there need to be very different approaches to each one of these. And very often the one group that gets completely ignored is children. And I suspect one of the reasons for that is also because we don't think of children as productive labor. So when we start counting migrant workers, we are mostly talking about able-bodied people who are contributing to the economy, and very often children fall through the cracks when the conversation remains, at that level of economy and labor. And as a result of that, children don't get any access to any kind of social protection measures that their parents should be having access to. The other issue is also that of parents' work conditions, which we don't talk about when we talk of children's health. We don't necessarily connect the two. But very often it is the parents' work conditions that have direct implications for children. So if you're talking about domestic workers, for example, who come from very interior parts of the country, live in the city for many months and then go back. Domestic workers don't have a single employer, but have multiple, each household is an employer in some sense. And very often you will hear people telling them, don't bring your child with you when you come to work because it's a nuisance, it will cry, it will make the house dirty, and so on. But what is not connected to that is the direct impact it has on the child's health, right? So imagine a child goes hungry for 6 to 8 hours in a day because the mother simply cannot take a break to breastfeed the child. This has also got very closely related to the way we do messaging for child health and nutrition. A lot of the messaging is about breastfeeding, about complementary feeding, about the right ways of looking after a child below 5. But it is very rarely connected to the idea of the mother being a worker. So it is almost assumed in the way we think about child nutrition and healthcare that mother is independent of a worker. When we talk about migration, this is far more critical to sort of bring together than any other time, because migrant women are without that social network or social support that many of us otherwise enjoy, in our extended networks, because migrant women are constantly moving. As I said before, between the city and the village, but also sometimes many times within the city. And as a result of that, all their networks are sort of broken when they're out of their home. And so when we talk about child nutrition and health, two things just to sort of sum up quickly. One is we need to quickly, very urgently need to talk about social protection measures for the parents, especially women, to make sure that their children benefit from it. And two, we need to stop separating the parents' work conditions from the children's well-being, because the two are intrinsically linked. And the minute we start disassociating the two of them, we are not going to be able to, come up with any good solutions for child health and nutrition. And this is far more important in the case of migrant workers than in any other group of workers.
Divya, thank you so much. I think you've highlighted something extremely important, which is really how invisible migrant workers are, and particularly their children, and how they lack access to, and therefore how they lack access to social protection measures and really social networks. Also, what you've highlighted, which often we may not think about, is the existing conditions that they work in and how it really impacts the health status of children. So thank you for that, Divya. Is there anything you wanted to add about what you all are doing in this area? Anything else?
So I've been working closely with Ajivika Bureau, which is a not-for-profit organization based in Ahmedabad, and we've been trying to sort of, one of the biggest problems of doing this kind of work is not knowing where to start, because there's so little quote-unquote evidence. All of us anecdotally, observationally can look at children and say they're deeply, extremely malnourished, but there isn't any kind of evidence, because as I said, the focus is so much on the labor that children are never counted or never part of the extensive surveys that we do, and a result of which are extremely challenging to undertake, because we simply don't know where to start or what the evidence is suggesting. So one of the things that we are trying to do is to try and track these long-term sort of implications of this kind of exposure to various elements that, what kind of impacts it can have on children. And it needs to tie up to all of it. Sort of, we need to start talking about adolescent health in linkage to that, maternal health in linkage, because none of them are independent of each other. But I also want to have a word of caution that every time we talk about maternal health, we need to also stop thinking about it as something that is necessarily connected to child health. We also need to talk about women's reproductive health separately.
Sure.
And so I'm being cautious about sort of, on one hand, I want to say that maternal health and adolescent health is critical for better child health, but at the same time, I also want to make sure that people think of these as two independent things, as a woman's right to her own body, both in terms of adolescent health especially, and maternal reproductive. I don't want to call it maternal health, but reproductive health.
Sure. Okay, thank you, Divya. We have next, I'd like to invite Katyayani Chamaraj to give us her thought. Katyayani, over to you.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. First of all, I'd like to thank Sphere and CRY for giving me this opportunity to address such a large list of participants. And I hope I am clear. You have laid a very good foundation, Kriyan, about the problems that the migrants are facing. And I think the picture that comes to our mind most when we think of children is that of the 12-year-old child who walked hundreds of kilometers and died at the end. So, I mean, how do we just overcome such pictures and live with such pictures? It is going to be something that we have to, swallow as something that happens once in a century. But and I think this was all totally avoidable. So if only the lockdown had been announced with better planning, I think the migrants would have been saved. And so coming directly to the subject, you see the migrant situation has been so terrible because none of the laws that apply to them have been implemented properly. And I speak about the Interstate Migrant Workmen's Act, the Unorganized Workers Social Security Act, and the Building and Other Construction Workers Act. Now, one of the central ministers said that when he was asked, why are the benefits not reaching the migrants? Why are they walking hundreds of kilometers and so on? He said that unless they are registered in some central database or in any database, the benefits cannot be reached to them. So the tragedy is that all these acts that I spoke about, the Interstate Migrant Workmen Act, the Unorganized Workers Act, and the Building and Other Construction Workers Act, require every worker to be registered somewhere in the database of the government. And because they are not registered, as per the law, they are falling between between the cracks and not getting the benefits that they should get. And the registration is the most important thing, which is not reaching them. And also, even if they had some kind of social security at their source of migration, it is not portable when they come to the city, and they have no identity when they come to the city. And so the benefits that they were getting at the source of migration are also denied to them, like ration card, health care, and they have to access all these at market rates because they are not able to access the subsidized versions at the destination of migration. And so everything becomes more expensive for them when they come to the cities. So we can imagine that the child which was able to access better food, perhaps in the source of migration, will be denied better food when she migrates with the parents. And if you look at the living conditions, now all these laws, especially the Interstate Migrant Workmen Act, if you go through it, it says what kind of a house should be given to a migrant worker. You know, it should have a veranda, it should have living space of 100 square feet per person. It should have kitchen space and toilet space in addition to that. And if it's a dormitory where only one man is working, So he should have 6.5 square meters of space. Now, where do we see this? Um, all of them are living in tin sheds, maybe 10 by 10 square feet, and where they cannot maintain the social distancing, and and many of them lack even drinking water and toilets, even though those are all provided for in the laws. And how do we expect them to maintain hygiene and avoid the COVID, coronavirus? So especially the child will be more vulnerable in these conditions without proper housing and toilet and drinking water. And more than that, when you look at a construction site, it is an unsafe zone for a child. How can you even imagine a child being on a site where lorries are coming in and out, where JCBs are working? And so in other countries, no child is allowed to be there on a construction site. There are safe and unsafe zones earmarked, and no child is allowed there. But we are allowing children to be housed in such conditions where they are exposed to danger. So I have heard of children being run over by cement lorries, and because even the creche that they're supposed to be in are not provided. The Interstate Migrant Workmen Act even says what kind of a creche should be there for children below 6 years. And it says there should be two rooms, one for sleeping, one for playing, and it should have a toilet and so on. And these are never provided by the employers, and there's nobody monitoring this. And so also, apart from the employer having to provide a creche, the Supreme Court has said that um, uh, the Anganwadi should be universalized, and for every population of 400, there should be an Anganwadi. And where do we find the universalized Anganwadis? And also, in one case, I came to know that the Anganwadi worker refuses to register migrant children because they are there only temporarily, and they keep shifting from here to there, and she cannot account for having asked for more food for the migrant child. And if that child disappears after 3 months, then she will be held accountable. Why did you take more food? So there's a built-in evasion of even registering a child in the Anganwadi. And as we all know, there aren't enough Anganwadis also. And also about the schooling. Now, none of these laws that I spoke about have anything to say about the compulsory school age child and its education. So even though we have a Right to Education Act, which says the child's right to education is part of the right to life of the child, most migrant children are not getting any schooling. Also, even if they are sent to a local school, there are problems of the cultural environment changing, the language being different. So the child cannot adjust itself in that local school. And also, uh, yes. So I will just like to explain a few things about what we have achieved in Karnataka by advocating with the government about addressing these problems. And we have actually got the Labor Department to issue a government order saying that it's the employer's duty to ferry the child to the nearest Anganwadi and to ferry it back. And we've also said it's the employer's duty to ferry the child to the nearest school. I mean, if there is no language barrier, if it is a child which has migrated within the state, perhaps. But the problem with the Interstate Migrant Workmen's Act is that it does not apply to parents who have migrated intrastate. So there are lakhs and millions of intrastate migrants who come from the underdeveloped areas to Bangalore or so, and they are completely not covered by any law about their migrant situation. So so we have got through a high court order a policy on the education of migrant children for Karnataka. So, where we say that seasonal hostels should be started at the source of migration, and as far as possible, if the parents are willing, the child should be kept at the source of migration and not be exposed to this change in cultural environment and so on. And if at all the parent is unwilling and brings the child along with him to the destination of migration, then the child should be kept in a at least a residential facility, and not be kept in a unsafe zone at a construction site, and that it should be compulsorily schooled. So we have this policy now in Karnataka, but it is yet to be implemented, though we have the court's blessings for this policy. And also, what we have advocated is that with the labor department, we have been able to get a government order issued that in order to provide better housing for the migrants, we have to have a workers migrant colony in every ward. That the building and other construction workers fund has more than 8,000 crores in Karnataka alone. And at the national level, it has more than 70,000 crores, which is the cess collected from the employers and which is not being used for the welfare of the workers. So in Karnataka now we have got the GO issued, which says that the building and other construction workers fund should be employed to build workers' colonies in every ward so that every migrant worker gets a decent house with toilet, with drinking water, and even a creche can be attached to it. And we have also specified the kind of creche that should be there, and even health facilities can be provided. And if it is a migrant child whose language is not that of the state, then a teacher can be provided who can educate them in that language in which they are familiar. So, and also, uh, apart from that, we have also mentioned in the policy for the education of migrant children that there should be safe and unsafe zones for the children, and no child should be in an unsafe zone at a construction site. And also, we are advocating that uh, the migrant child, before it migrates, it has to be registered at the Gram Panchayat or wherever it is at the source of migration, and a migrant card should be given to the child so that where it comes to the destination of migration, it can again register itself in a school. So we have said that the Gram Panchayat or the urban municipality should have registers for migrant children. And we are actually now advocating that there should be a register of all citizens in a ward at the municipal level or at the Gram Panchayat level, and a separate register should be maintained for the workers and a separate register for the migrant temporary workers also, so that you know, and so that we know who is living where, and so that benefits can be reached to them. And we are also saying that the labor department is so short staffed that they do not have enough staff to inspect every construction site or every labor camp. So there's nobody in the municipality or in the Gram Panchayat who is mandated to enforce the labor laws, um, and make sure that all the benefits that are supposed to be given to them, whether from the Interstate Migrant Workmen Act or the Building and Other Construction Workers Act, is provided to them. So we are saying there should be a labor cell in every ward of a municipality and a labor cell in every Gram Panchayat with a labor official who maintains these registers of workers and also visits every construction site to make sure that the labor laws are being enforced. And we know that many of these workers are, living in a bonded labor like situation at the source of migration, and possibly many of them have been trafficked also. So there is nobody, even under the Bonded Labor Act, who does periodic surveys or periodic inspections to make sure that there is no bonded labor or no trafficking. We know that many children also can get trafficked in labor camps. And so we are saying that the ward committees that are there in the bigger municipalities should be uh, uh, designated as the task forces which will assist the vigilance committees of the Bonded Labor Act, so that at every ward level there is somebody monitoring the living and working conditions of the laborers. So we have advocated all this, and we hope that the authorities will take note of it, and especially give more attention to the migrants who are, you know, falling between the cracks and not getting any benefits anywhere. And we should stop seeing these pathetic and heartrending pictures of them walking thousands of kilometers, which is unthinkable. And it brings tears to everybody's eyes. So it is time we started looking at their situation and realize that they are contributing so much to build our cities, and we are not looking after them. So it is time it opened the authorities' eyes also, to make sure that we take care of them and give them the life that they deserve. Thank you.
Katyayani, thank you so much. You're certainly doing some fabulous advocacy work. And clearly it is critical for us to address these larger level laws and the implementation of these laws. Anything from Interstate Migrant Act to even the RTE, if we have to improve the lives of children. So thank you for that. I'll move on to now Saurabh Jain. Over to you for your views.
Hi, good afternoon. So I would bring a different perspective. Actually, my own background has been more about startups and uh, about different ways in which we can solve the problem of education. So I believe that migrants, obviously, in the current scenario, they have a big problem. But in general, also, I would say that education for migrants is a big issue, because I have personally visited a few schools during my work, and I've seen that government schools generally lack the infrastructure and the quality of education which is generally there for our kids. So that I think is an issue. Obviously, now in the current scenario, the things have got even more complicated. So we require, I think, more Akshay Patra like programs where, like in the native villages, still the migrants don't come back. And I feel that obviously the current academic year of these students would be severely impacted, because I don't feel that in next 2-3 months the situation would be 100% under control. Maybe after we have a vaccine or a remedy, which I don't foresee before December. So it will take some time. So in the interim, I feel that we have to be more innovative for education. So I, besides Paytm, being vice president at Paytm, I also run open education project called Fun to Do Labs, and even in Paytm Build for India, the project which I had, we have tried to do some research and innovation around education, and we feel that education through paper printables is a good way of doing that, because digital generally, like I'm seeing my kids now these days studying using Zoom and Microsoft Teams, etc. But obviously without internet and without proper access to devices, it is very difficult to have the lower middle class or even the labor class having access to that digital technology. So I feel paper printables are very good in that sense, and the cost of paper printables is relatively negligible. The other thing which I, through my work, I have realized is that why kids don't study, especially the poor kids. I've seriously seen that the education system currently tries to copy the education. Say what, say my kids are going to modern school in Delhi, so we generally try to copy the education from those kind of schools to villages, which that model I think can never be successful, because the quality of teachers obviously would remain an issue. I have personally gone on ground. I have funded an Akshay Patra school. I have gone in ILSS to a school, and I have also gone to 2 3 NGO schools. What I've realized is that quality of teachers is the main issue, and that cannot be resolved in villages. So the only way to make education better for kids is through the better design of educational material. The other thing is we can make educational more fun, because wherever I visited villages, I always ask the kids, do you know about YouTube or do you know about Google? And most kids know about YouTube. And if they know about YouTube, then obviously they can learn a lot online. And now after Geo and all, I think obviously that barrier is reducing. It has not gone 100%, but it is reducing. So what we can do is that we can design the curriculum in such a way. So I have researched a lot, and over years what I've realized is that human beings are not this is a controversial statement, but this is true as per my research, my own personal research. This is my personal research, not like company's research. So is that human beings were not born to study. Human beings were born to play. So when we see that kids are not studying, or kids don't want to learn in government schools or even in private schools, the reason is that the curriculum has been designed in a way where it becomes sort of a mini version of office instead of mini version of playing. So we can create paper printables which can make the educational content more visual. Generally the visual content is there for nursery, KG, first kind of classes, but after first or second, the content is not visual. I think it should be designed to be more visual. Then it should be based on board games. For example, a game like Monopoly can be used easily to teach addition, subtraction, even numbers, place value, etc. But not much research and not much effort has been done in that area. And the other thing which I'm currently researching, because right now I'm spending a lot of time with the kids. What I'm seeing is that kids are only spending time on two things: either they are playing games, or they are watching stories on TV. So basically when they see Doraemon or they see any other film, it's basically a story. So if we can use stories for teaching content, say for example introduction to pi can be done using, say, some story like Alibaba, or so those can be done. So I think this can be a good trigger and a catalyst. I am more like a positive person. So I always feel that obviously 2020 has been relatively tough for most of the people, but I believe that future holds good, because now people know that school is like school uh, would not be working this year, and if kids would be able to study, then obviously you can scale some of the best practices which schools have experimented this year. We can do that. So for migrants, I think the best thing would be that we have to understand, we have to use design thinking, and we have to understand that parents are generally not well educated. So we have to design the curriculum in a way which is different from the curriculum in cities, especially for the middle class and upper middle class people. The reason is that my kids have access to me. So I always say that generally, like, even if we have a good teacher ratio, it can maximum be 1 is to 20. But my kids have access to me. They can learn maths or they can learn English from me. But obviously these are issues for kids of migrants. So we should have better design. We should use digital delivery, and maybe digital handset is not available with every kid. So what we can do, we can have paper printables for last mile. And I truly believe I've seen Akshay Patra working, and I have adopted a school in Mathura, which is being served by Akshay Patra. I see that we should have more such NGOs which can do what Akshay Patra is doing. And the next final thing which I would like to focus would be on financial inclusion. So I believe that right now, generally the model has been that people donate to NGOs, and then generally NGOs donate to individuals. But I think now, due to changes in technology, especially digital payments technology, what we can do is that people can directly pay to the parents of the kid. Maybe some checking and some like sort of audit mechanisms have to be there, informal mechanisms. NGOs obviously can add value there, but once people start giving directly to kids and their parents, especially like for example, for a person like me, adopting one or two kids is not that big an issue. But generally, people have this apprehension that like, oh, I should not adopt an NGO because I don't know, like especially for migrants, I don't know, I cannot go on ground. So I think due to digital technology now, obviously you can talk using WhatsApp or Zoom with that particular family you have adopted, and you can obviously have a Paytm account for that family. So those kind of things are now possible. NGOs obviously have a value. They would be doing the checking and all sort of last mile things, but that would give more trust, because once I talk to that family and if I know that I'm paying 500 rupees for education of that kid per month, so I will get more trust whenever I will see that that kid is studying. So I think that is also some direction which we can use. And now we have the financial infrastructure, whether it's Paytm, whether it's Jandan account, so that is available. So like in transportation, etc., in logistics, we are seeing that the middleman is being eliminated. I think the NGOs, I don't think like a middleman, but I think they can become more differentiated in that sense, where they are helping direct access to money from people living in cities who want to donate. They can give directly to the poor people, migrants, and especially these migrants, when they will come back in cities, it would become even easier, because obviously in cities physically meeting also would be possible. So those kind of newer things, I think, from a like, this is like I was saying, I come from a startup background, so I think things from more from an opportunity point of view and from a transformation point of view. So these are some of my suggestions.
So, yeah, Saurabh, you talked about printables, and we use workbooks extensively because, as you said, not everybody has access to digital. And I would urge people to look at the last webinar that we had on education, where there were a lot of really interesting, innovative ideas around education. But Saurabh, I have one question for you. What do you see as the role of, and I'm sorry to put you on the spot here, but what do you see the role of corporates? Do they have any role at all, especially in the two areas that you talked about, which was financial inclusion and education?
Corporates, especially in financial inclusion, Paytm has been doing a lot of things. So we have a Asha program. So in that we are trying to create business, like, so there is a technical term called business correspondents, where people can help last mile delivery of financial services to the villages. So Paytm Bank, Payments Bank, has been sponsoring an event where a lot of events where people are being trained to become business correspondents, and all the expenses of the training, etc., are being taken care of by Paytm Payments Bank. So the aim is that once people are able to get their livelihood through and spread the message of financial inclusion. So there, I think corporates have a aim. Although being in a corporate, what I've realized is that obviously a corporate is not like an NGO. So corporates can give money. Corporates can execute also using their machinery on ground, sales force, etc. But the issue is that like, I have especially I have a lot of friends in NGO sector, and I know that so these people can live in villages. They can live for days at end. So generally, corporate employees want to dedicate 1 or 2 days a year. Like, they obviously they cannot dedicate 30, 40 days a year for those things. So I think there is a limit to where corporate can help. But obviously, giving money is the easier part for corporate. But personally, I believe that doing something on ground is better than giving money, because I have seen a lot of corporates, like just to share one example. So once we were doing some event, and we also got some sponsorship proposal from some college, and I told that we are doing this event, so I don't have bandwidth to come to your college as a sponsor. And he said, "नहीं sir, कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता. Lot of people, lot of corporate sponsor our events, and वो आते नहीं है, उनको कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता. We just send a photo." So I believe that sort of practice by corporates is wrong, because at the end of the day, you have to get involved. And I believe a lot of corporates, for example, I have in personally tried to get a lot of inputs from our design team for designing paper printables. The reason is that that design team is very innovative. They know a lot of best practices, and obviously they have guided me in general. Like so something like even a small thing like which book to read for designing paper printable. So that kind of guidance obviously is helpful. So I believe it's not either or. It's basically corporate should work with NGOs, and NGOs should become more like startups. And I believe even more than corporate, startups should work with NGOs, because startups also have another important use case. So for example, our founder Vijay Shekhar Sharma and even our design team, they reach out to a lot of all these rickshaw wala, thela walas, dhaba walas. Personally, Vijay, in fact, he is one of the youngest billionaires in India, but he still sometimes talks to dhaba walas, etc., and tries to understand their pain point, and based on that, tries to make the product better. So even there, I think the corporates can have win-win, because obviously if products become better, it becomes easier to grow. And also rickshaw wala, thele wala, you see they don't use debit cards or credit cards, even though debit cards and credit cards especially have been there in India for last 30-40 years. So basically I think those two things can be done. We can make our products better for people who are less educated and for people who are poor, because like I see credit cards can reach poor, but they were never designed in that way. So Paytm is designing using AI for that also. So we are using AI also for that. So I think a lot of things can be done by corporates, and obviously right now we have just scratched the surface.
Thank you so much, Saurabh. I know you're looking at a different role for civil society, but right now we're playing, I believe, an extremely critical role, especially in this crisis. And I do hope that going forward, we will get some good support from corporations. So thank you for that. We'll go next to Shafila, Divya Shafila. Shafila, we'd love to hear your views.
Shafila, I think you muted, so please unmute yourself first.
Okay, sorry. Thank you so much. I hope you're able to hear me now.
Yeah, great.
Okay, thank you, Kriyan. I think Divya, Katyayani, and Saurabh, my predecessors, have actually set up the stage really well in terms of the plight of the migrant workers and their families in India. Let me just quickly share a brief presentation. I hope you're able to see my screen.
Not yet, but
not yet. Now we are, yeah.
All right. Okay. I will not repeat what they have already said because I think Divya had touched on the health services, Katyayani and Saurabh have touched on the education aspect. I just want to add to what they have talked about in terms of the one of the issues these children of migrant laborers face, even if there is a policy for continuing their education wherever they are, is the linguistic issue. A child, imagine a child from Bihar is migrating to Karnataka, Bangalore, and the medium of instruction for them has been Hindi in Bihar. And if they're moving to Bangalore and say later after that to Kerala, the medium of instruction changes to Kannada and Malayalam. So how does the child cope with that? And we're talking about partial migration. So after a few months, they again go back. So it becomes very difficult for the child to cope between Hindi and Kannada, then Hindi and Malayalam. And next year, let us say the father or mother, the parents decide to go to Tamil Nadu, then it becomes Tamil again. So that is one of the major issues, and which I don't think any policies right now are addressing. We need to look at this area as well in the government schools. This is one gap that I see right now. The main thing that I see is that these migrants, even before the pandemic, were, as Kachani rightly pointed out, out of the social system itself. Unless somebody is within the social system, it becomes very difficult to reach out to them. And so because they're not within the education system or within the health system, this has a direct impact on their protection. And many a times, since in spite of these policies, it is these policies are not implemented in the sense that, as Divya was telling, that in spite of the Anganwadi workers' mandate that they need to register every child in their locality, they fail to do that for migrant laborers. The children do not go to school. So they end up automatically on the streets and get into child labor, different forms of child labor, be it domestic labor, rag picking, and that exposes them to different health hazards. It exposes them to physical and sexual abuse. And in states like Tamil Nadu and Karnataka, as well as Katyani was talking about, they get into entrapped and bonded or forced labor. This is even before the pandemic. So imagine what the pandemic, how it would have only amplified it much more, how many folds it would have increased. So the social net, which was scarce earlier, becomes much more scarce. There is food insecurity now that they have come back home. Many of them have traveled back thousands of kilometers, some of them without ration cards. In spite of the state governments announcing ration and cash transfers to them, not all have got. About 50% have not even received both of them. They've either received only the cash transfer or the ration. Those who do not have a ration card are almost at a loss because in spite of the government again trying to register them, the registration has still not happened. And when you see for livelihood, where we did a survey here in Bihar, and one of the findings is that 46% of them only want to return back in 3 months. So the other more than 50% are going to stay back. So what about their livelihoods? And the kind of wages that they were earning in Kerala, they were earning 1,000 rupees per day. In Tamil Nadu, they were earning about 850 rupees per day. Whereas when they come back now under the Narega, they would get anything around 200 to 250 rupees only per day. So that it decreases their income. Added to that, there are hazards that they are facing. We have seen the cyclone in West Bengal and Orissa. Bihar is getting up for floods. So all of these coming together is only increasing their distress. This actually is something that the adults would handle. And the non-contributors to these are children. And they become most vulnerable under these circumstances. So this has led to the rise in early marriages among girls. Because the children are now looked at as a burden, they want to shed out whomever they can. And so adolescent girls become the primary victims. Early marriages are on the rise. Trafficking is one interesting thing that I've seen, that there is an arrest in trafficking currently because of the lockdown situation and the transport not being very conducive for trafficking. But there is another huge issue that has come out, and that is that these traffickers are targeting these families and catching them in their vulnerability. They are advancing them money, they are advancing them food grains and booking these children right now. So once the transport system opens up across the country, there could be a flood of trafficking. This is something that we really need to watch out for. Then child labor. Now, children who were not working earlier would now get into child labor. There is an increase in domestic violence. There is an increase in abuse for both children and women as well. And just elaborating a little bit on abuse, there is a lot of physical abuse. We have done some FGDs with children in Jharkhand and across the urban locations in more than 7 cities across India. And physical abuse is something that children are going through right now. The entire family being confined in a small space is actually, initially it was good that the family came together, but this is not something that we're used to. So each of them, the parents and the children, got onto each other's nerves, and that resulted in physical abuse for the children. So there was one child who said, my mother was always happy earlier, but now she's more irritable. Anything that I ask, she beats me up. But at the same time, when we had the FGD with parents, they were talking to us about how their children are not listening to them because they have a lot of things on their mind. How do I fend for my family? How do I provide for my family? Where does the next meal come from? What happens once this ration gets over? So physical abuse is on the rise. Sexual abuse is on the rise. Sadly, 94% of the perpetrators are known to the child and are in close proximity to the child. And this pandemic, the lockdown has brought the perpetrators and the child, the victim, in close quarters for a longer period of time. And that we do not know how much it has actually amplified, the sexual abuse. We need to be really watchful, and there is no escape for the child right now. And next is cyber crimes. Children are now, many children have access to the internet, and some of the education is happening on the internet. Even the NGOs are reaching out to them via WhatsApp and messages. So the children are very tech savvy these days, but at the same time, they are also, exposed to cyber crimes, and children need safeguarding from that as well. And the fourth and very important thing is the mental health of children. We, in our FGD, we realize that children are going through depression. They are feeling lonely. They're showing unusual behavior. The parents have said that the fights with siblings has increased. Their stubbornness has increased. Disobedience has increased. They don't want to do exactly what the parents are asking them to do. So there has been, the children are dealing with their own issues, at home. And just to give you an idea, some of the things that I've highlighted here, there are many things that the children brought out, but some of the things that I really want to bring to all of our notice here is, we ask the children, what is it that is really bothering you? What is it that, what are your concerns? So these are the few things that they have shared with us. They have the fear of the spread of COVID-19, the fear of they being infected itself, and they're not sure how the future looks, because they see that their parents are jobless, they're always at home, and they do not have enough ration. And most of these migrants, they live by the day. They are daily wage laborers, so they live by the day. They are not somebody who plan ahead. They do not have savings that they can fall back on. They are not resilient to such shocks and stresses. The second is that they are not able to spend time with friends, and they feel isolated. Let me just show you one quick. Okay. Yeah. The children have said they're very unhappy staying at home. Initially, it was okay, but now they're very unhappy staying at home, and this is why. The topmost area is that they do not have friends. From what they have told us, the very first layer of their own social net is their own friends. It is only then, after that, only come the rest all. They are not able to go outside, as Saurabh truly said. Children particularly, I know adults too, but children particularly are meant to play. That is what they enjoy. And here they're not able to go out with friends. They're not able to jump around, run around. I think half the fun of going to school is that you will meet your friends and you get to play there along with studying. And that is something that they're not able to do. And so these are the various reasons that they said, why they don't like being at home. They cannot go outside. They're bored sitting at home. There's no time for education. Initially, household work was okay, but now it is getting too much. So these are some of the reasons. And once again, just to stress again on the friends part, when any incident happens with them, 63% of the children have said that the first person they reveal it to is a friend. And their parents come only next. Now imagine this child in the confines of their home with a perpetrator. It could be their own parent, or could be a relative, could be a neighbor. They're confined there. They are going through abuse, and they can't even share it with somebody. Look at the mental trauma that they are going through. So that is why children are going through depression. And the third one is closure of toilet complexes, and this is in the urban areas. In closed slums, they have toilet complexes, and those are closed right now because of the COVID-19 situation. So open defecation has increased, and this has put adolescent girls at risk. So safety of girls has become an issue. The children also express that they are very anxious over their parents' financial situation. Another quite a strange thing which we thought was they're not able to sleep well. We know that children generally during holidays, they tend to oversleep. They wake up late. But children have said that they are not able to sleep well and they wake up early in the morning. They don't know what is actually what they're going through. I remember one child, we asked them if they, anytime they feel, lonely. So she said that, yes, she feels lonely, and she says, out of the blue, she feels like crying. And she said she doesn't even know why she wants to cry. She just wants to cry. And we asked her, what does she do then? And she said that she goes away to an isolated place in the house and sits and cries. So there's no one that she can share with. And more often than not, with the parents, they are right now at conflict. Coming to the last point on that, one of the child said that they want to run away from home when the parents call them. We have also had an incident where a child committed suicide because they had a difference of opinion with the parent. Children are going through a traumatic experience, and it is very important that we address their mental health before irreversible damage takes place. It's very important. We probably haven't seen this magnitude earlier. I know it is new for all of us, but if we do not address it on a war footing, there is more damage that can happen to an entire generation. Uh, Coming towards the end, just a few recommendations. We need to, yes, I saw in many of the messages that have come right now, everybody was asking about the protection mechanisms, that a migrant child protection policy should come up. And I think protection issues are not very different for children of migrants and the other children. They're very similar. However, the vulnerability of the children of migrants is much more. The chances and the risk that they are in is much more. But the risks are to a large extent similar. So some of the recommendations are that we need to work. The CSOs need to work with the government to work on appropriate programs to address these issues such as early marriage and sexual abuse. There needs to be a robust reporting mechanism for children and women, which is functional and accessible very clearly. If you remember, I think in right at the beginning of the lockdown, the Hindu had reported how Childline had received 92,000 calls of child abuse and violence in just 11 days. In just 11 days. That tells us the magnitude of the issue. So we need to have a service which is accessible, to the children and women. And psychosocial support is very important at this point of time. There have to be dedicated lines where the children can actually call and get counseling. Well Vision is working with NIMHANS and the CIP in Ranchi, Central Institute of Psychiatry in Ranchi. We are working to see if we can have a dedicated line for children that they can call up in case that ever they think they need help. Also, creating awareness of child protection through various campaigns is very important. Training of the frontline workers and volunteers in child protection is very important. Finally, I think addressing it at the root cause is very important. It is important that the perpetrators are transformed. Parents know how to take care of their children while dealing with their own issues. How to deal with the issues of children, particularly adolescent children, is very important. Because right now we see, if you've seen the earlier graph, the children want to go and tell their friend, not their parents. It's only 24% of the children are comfortable telling their parents. So parents need to create a comfortable environment, an open environment at home, so that the children can actually come and share in a scenario like this. So these are some of the recommendations. And in the current scenario also, World Vision has tried to do telecounseling through sending out voice messages, voice calls to children and their parents. We've tried to address the issue of mental health and child protection. We have used that as a medium to create awareness on child protection. So we are hoping that the government, the government departments would come up with more ways and policies to protect children, particularly migrant children who are at huge risk. Thank you, Priyan.
Thank you so much, Shafira. You've so effectively described what children have been going through during this lockdown. It certainly kept me up for many, many nights. And I think the one thing that I must point out that, you know, the situation of migrants and their families was always very bad. I think right now the pandemic has really brought visibility to it. And I think it's, in many ways, it's our responsibility and an opportunity for us to keep the spotlight on migrants and their families, so that we look at various ways to alleviate what they are going through. We're running out of time, so let me just move on there. We'd like to hear from Manjeet Kaur. Manjeet ma'am, over to you.
Yes. थैंक यू. आप सभी को नमस्कार. मेरी भाषा हिंदी होगी, तो हो सकता है कि कुछ आपको लैंग्वेज में कोई इशू होगा, तो जो होस्ट हैं, जो ऑर्गेनाइजर हैं, दे विल हेल्प ऑल ऑफ यू आल्सो. सो मैं जितना शुरू से सुन रही हूँ, मुझे लग रहा है सारी बातें आ गई हैं, तो मैंने थोड़ा सा अपने आप को चेंज करने का सोचा कि मैं अपनी जर्नी ऑफ माइग्रेशन को समझने की, नॉलेज को, इसको लेने की, अंडरस्टैंडिंग की जर्नी को मैं बोलती हूँ, तो ये जल्दी भी होगा. एक स्टोरी टेलिंग वे में मैं शायद कन्वे कर पाऊंगी कि एक पर्सन इस माइग्रेशन को समझते हुए कैसे सोल्यूशन तक पहुंचने के लिए डिटर्मिनेशन तक जाता है. तो जब ये बात हम लोग कॉलेज लाइफ में पढ़ते थे या जॉब में आए थे, तो हमारे लिए माइग्रेशन मतलब स्लम एरिया डेवलप हो रहा है मेट्रो सिटीज में, क्योंकि माइग्रेशन से लोग आ रहे हैं. दूसरा था कि हम लेबर मार्केट में देखते थे कि लोग भीड़ में खड़े हैं और लेबर की डिमांड के लिए लोग खड़े हैं. तो ये दोनों कंडीशन बहुत पेनफुल थी, क्योंकि दोनों कंडीशन में लिविंग स्टैंडर्ड बहुत पुअर था, इकोनॉमिक कंडीशन बहुत पुअर थी. तो इसको समझते हुए एक दिमाग में था कि वी नीड टू वर्क ऑन दिस. और इसके बाद धीरे धीरे समझ में आया कि शॉर्ट टर्म माइग्रेशन जो है, सीजनल माइग्रेशन को शॉर्ट टर्म माइग्रेशन कहा जाता था, लेकिन सीजनल माइग्रेशन को गवर्नमेंट के डिक्शनरी में था ही नहीं है. और इसका सबसे बड़ा इशू होता था, जो बच्चों को इफेक्ट करता था, वो आउट ऑफ स्कूल हो जाते थे, उनके साथ सेक्सुअल हरासमेंट के केसेस होते थे, लर्निंग लेवल उनकी डैमेज होती थी, न्यूट्रिशन उनका डैमेज होता था. तब ये धीरे धीरे बहुत सारे ऑर्गेनाइजेशन ने डिसाइड किया, जैसे समर चैरिटेबल ट्रस्ट में, कि हमें इस पे काम करने की जरूरत है. और इसके साथ ही कि कहाँ काम करना है, सोर्स पे काम करना है, डेस्टिनेशन पे काम करना है. तो जब डेस्टिनेशन पे काम करने के लिए गए, तो पता चला लैंग्वेज एक बहुत बड़ा बैरियर है, क्योंकि अगर उड़ीसा का व्यक्ति कहीं तमिलनाडु में आया है, तो तमिलनाडु का एजुकेशन सिस्टम उसको सपोर्ट नहीं करता है. तो लगा कि कहीं ना कहीं सोर्स पे काम करने की जरूरत है. तो इसी के लिए लर्निंग एंड माइग्रेशन प्रोग्राम की शुरुआत अमेरिकन इंडिया फाउंडेशन ने की थी, जिसमें मेरा एक्सपीरियंस इस माइग्रेशन को लेकर शुरू हुआ था. तो जब हम सोर्स में गए, तो हमने छत्तीसगढ़ को जब मैप करना शुरू किया, तो देखा कि कुछ पर्टिकुलर एरियाज हैं जो इसमें माइग्रेशन ज्यादा होता है. और ये बहुत ज्यादा इशू था कि ये एरियाज ऐसा नहीं है कि वहाँ वाटर का प्रॉब्लम था, क्राइसिस था, अपॉर्चुनिटी क्राइसिस थी. ये कास्ट सिस्टम से भी जुड़ा हुआ एक बहुत बड़ा मामला था. और पर्टिकुलर कास्ट वाले जिनको वहां अपॉर्चुनिटी घरों में काम करने की या खेतों में काम करने की नहीं दी जाती थी, वही कास्ट बाहर माइग्रेट होना शुरू होता था. तो ये एक हुआ सोर्स को लेकर, डिस्ट्रिक्ट और एरिया इस तरह आइडेंटिफाई हुए. फिर एक डिस्ट्रिक्ट को एज ए पायलट लिया, और एक डिस्ट्रिक्ट में जब हम लोगों ने एक सीजनल हॉस्टल, जिसे रेसिडेंशियल हॉस्टल शुरू किया, जिसके बारे में भी बात हो रही थी अभी, तो उसमें पहली बार में 15 बच्चे आए जिनको छोड़ के पेरेंट्स जाने को एग्री हुए. इसके 2-3 कारण थे. एक तो उन पेरेंट्स के लिए एजुकेशन या चिल्ड्रन का केयर या न्यूट्रिशन बहुत वैल्यू नहीं करता था, उनके लिए वैल्यू करता था कि फैमिली को कम से कम एटलीस्ट मिनिमम लेवल ऑफ इकोनॉमी हो जाए. तो वैसे में कन्विंस कर पाना बहुत मुश्किल था. तो सिर्फ 15 बच्चे पहली बार में आए, लेकिन जैसे सेकेंड ईयर आया और इन 15 बच्चे का वेट बढ़ा, न्यूट्रिशन बढ़ा, कॉन्फिडेंस बढ़ा, तो नेक्स्ट ईयर हमारे पास अचानक से मोर देन 50 बच्चे के पेरेंट्स आए. और इस 50 बच्चे के पेरेंट्स के बाद गवर्नमेंट की तरफ से ये ऑफर आया कि एक MOU साइन करने की जरूरत है, जिसमें आप सभी डिस्ट्रिक्ट्स में सीजनल हॉस्टल को लाइन अप करना है. ये सारे एक्सपीरियंस के साथ हम चल ही रहे थे कि कोविड का ये कंडीशन आया, पेंडेमिक आया, और हमें शेल्टर, जो टोटल जो लेबर का शेल्टर संभालने की जिम्मेदारी मिली. जब हम शेल्टर संभालने पहुंचे, तो जो बच्चे वहां पहुंचे थे, वो स्ट्रेस को समझ ही नहीं पा रहे थे, क्योंकि शेल्टर में एक बेटर एनवायरनमेंट हमने दिया था। लेकिन शेल्टर के बाहर जब लोग पैदल चल रहे थे, वहां पे हमने लेबर मूवमेंट में सपोर्ट करना चालू किया, बसेस को अरेंज करना, ट्रकों से लोगों को ठीक से बैठाना। वहां जो बच्चों की कंडीशन थी, जो बच्चे वहां आ रहे थे, उनके साथ था कि वो इतने भूखे थे कि पानी के अलावा कुछ खा नहीं पाते थे। तो एक तो था ऑलरेडी उनका न्यूट्रिशन वैल्यू बहुत पुअर था। उड़ीसा की तरफ जाने वाले जो बच्चे थे या झारखंड की जाने वाले, वो 12 या 13 साल के बच्चे थे जो काम करते थे। जब उनसे बातचीत होती थी तो पता चला कि वो तो 7-8 साल की उम्र में अपने चाचा बाबा के साथ चले गए हैं, क्योंकि उनके पेरेंट्स नहीं है। मतलब अधिकांश वो बच्चे बाहर जा रहे हैं जिनके पेरेंट्स नहीं है। उनके चाचा के पास जिम्मेदारी आ गई है, मामा के पास जिम्मेदारी आ गई है, और उन जिम्मेदारियों को लेकर ये जाते हैं, लेकिन उनसे काम कराते हैं और उनके न्यूट्रिशन का भी ख्याल नहीं रखते। तो पैदल चलते आने में सबसे ज्यादा वो बच्चे हमें मिले जिनकी न्यूट्रिशन कंडीशन खराब थी और जिनके पेरेंट्स नहीं थे। इन बच्चों का लर्निंग की स्थिति बहुत खराब है। ये रेगुलर ना स्कूल जाते थे ना आंगनबाड़ी। किसी के पास भी उनका आईडी नहीं था, आधार कार्ड नहीं था। इवन हमें एक अपॉर्चुनिटी मिली बेंगलोर लॉ यूनिवर्सिटी के साथ माइग्रेंट्स को लेके फ्लाइट में लेके आने को। तो इंडिगो के साथ हमें सबसे ज्यादा जो इशू शॉर्ट आउट करना पड़ा, वो इशू था कि इनके पास, बच्चों के पास आईडी नहीं था, क्योंकि आधार कार्ड बनने के लिए कोई बेस नहीं था। और वो बच्चे यहाँ कभी आए नहीं थे, किसी स्कूल में नहीं जाते थे, किसी आंगनबाड़ी में नहीं जाते थे। किसी भी प्रकार का आरटी तो दूर की बात है, सिंगल एंटाइटलमेंट बेसिक जो उनको मिलना था वो भी नहीं मिल रहा था। हरासमेंट का एक अपना लेवल है, लड़कियां लड़के दोनों सेम हरास्ड होते हैं, नशे के आदी हो जाते हैं। जमीन एरियाज में माइग्रेंट के पेरेंट्स अपने काम में चले जाते हैं, बच्चों को छोड़ देते हैं, तो नशे के आदी हो जाते हैं। क्राइम क्रिमिनल के रूप में ये डेवलप होते हैं, और पॉवर्टी अपने आप में बहुत बड़ा इशू है। तो इन सब एक्सपीरियंस को देखते हुए फाइनली ये जब हमारा ये फोकस बढ़ने लगा, जब लोग लौट गए और अब हम अभी यहाँ 8 डिस्ट्रिक्ट में फोकस कर पा रहे हैं, तो हम एक बेस्ट एग्जांपल हमने जो किया कि हम क्यों ना कोशिश करें कि सब, एक तो जाए ही नहीं पेरेंट्स, टोटली वहां रुके। उसके लिए सबसे अच्छा है कि इंटर डिपार्टमेंट कन्वर्जेंस की। उतना बड़ा इशू यहाँ अपॉर्चुनिटी का नहीं है जितना बड़ा है कन्वर्जेंस का। मनरेगा जॉब कार्ड नहीं है जो स्किल लेबर बाहर जा रहा है, उसके पास श्रम कार्ड नहीं है, उसके तो जितने एंटाइटलमेंट्स हैं, डिपार्टमेंटल नहीं है। एक सिंगल गांव में हमने पूछा आप ऐसा क्या आपको चाहिए कि आप बाहर ना जाओ, उन्होंने कहा सिर्फ एक तालाब मिल जाए तो हम बाहर नहीं जाएंगे। इतना सिंगल काम था। 72 फैमिली सिर्फ इसलिए रुक गई क्योंकि उसे तालाब मिल गया। किसी ने कहा हमें छोटा सा हॉलर मिल मिल जाएगा तो हम 10 फैमिली नहीं जाएंगे। इसका मतलब है कि कहीं ना कहीं इंडस्ट्री डिपार्टमेंट, सारे डिपार्टमेंट का कन्वर्जेंस लेबर डिपार्टमेंट के साथ नहीं होता है। दूसरा है लेबर डिपार्टमेंट के साथ कोई इजी वो बात नहीं होता है कि कैसे रजिस्ट्रेशन कराएं। इतना कॉम्प्लिकेटेड है रजिस्ट्रेशन करना कि पेरेंट्स रजिस्ट्रेशन नहीं करा पाते। उसके कारण उसकी जो प्रेग्नेंट वाइफ होती है, पेरेंट किसी भी मेल की, उस प्रेग्नेंट वाइफ को भी कोई भी एंटाइटल नहीं मिल रहा था। जब वाइफ को एंटाइटलमेंट नहीं मिलता, उसको अच्छा न्यूट्रिशियस फूड नहीं मिल पाता, तो उसके जो बच्चे जन्म लेते हैं वो न्यूट्रिशन माल नरिश्ड होते हैं। फिर वही एक साइकिल विशियस चलती रहती है। दूसरा है कि रेसिडेंशियल हॉस्टल को कहीं ना कहीं हमें बहुत बढ़ावा देने की जरूरत है, क्योंकि अगर जा ही रहे हैं पेरेंट्स, अपना डिस्ट्रेस माइग्रेशन नहीं है, चॉइस माइग्रेशन है, तो बच्चे को ना लेके जाएं, क्योंकि उनकी लिविंग कंडीशन वो मेंटेन नहीं कर सकते। तीसरा है कि चाइल्ड माइग्रेशन फ्री विलेज का एक ड्रीम डेवलप करना चाहिए कि हर गांव ऐसा हो जहां कम से कम बच्चे तो बाहर ना जा पाए। इंटर डिपार्टमेंट के साथ इंटर स्टेट कोऑर्डिनेशन की जरूरत है कि ये एटलीस्ट इस पंचायत से निकला व्यक्ति वहां पहुंच रहा है तो उस जगह पे पता हो वो कहाँ जा रहा है, और वहां उसको इंश्योर किया सके, तो उसके कम से कम बच्चों की सिक्योरिटी को इंश्योर किया सके। और सबसे बड़ी बात है लेबर मार्केट को कहीं ना कहीं ऑर्गेनाइज करना हो, क्योंकि इससे सबसे ज्यादा बच्चे अफेक्ट हो रहे हैं। So finally, this is my experience behind this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Manjiti. For those that may have had a language issue here, I'm just going to quickly try to sum up. I think what Manjiti talked about is certainly that they, as their organization mapped the source area, which was for them Chhattisgarh. They realized that a lot of migration was happening due to one of the root causes was the caste system itself. And what they did was look at residential hostels, which was hugely challenging initially to get parents to put their children to residential hostels. I think residential hostels is something that CRY is working with. I know in Maharashtra, we're certainly looking at residential hostels. So how do we keep children in the villages? Exactly what Manjeet talked about. So that at least the children's education, etc., is not impeded in any way. There are a couple of other things she spoke about is being critical is certainly interdepartment convergence. The other thing is documentation and ID, so that ID proves that so that the families can get their entitlements. That's extremely critical, and that's what's lacking. Um, I think that really sums it up really quickly, but I'm so sorry we are running out of time. So I try to put things together in the most succinct manner. But thank you again, Manjiji. Let me move on to finally Vikrant Mahajan. Vikrant was the CEO of Sphere India. You are the last panelist to go. Go for it.
Okay, thank you so much. I think firstly, thanks to all the panelists. I think some of very excellent discussion I'm got a privilege to be part of. I think it's all issues got covered. I think the way Divya started with, firstly, putting up the right issues up front, and how the Kathani ma'am has very, I think, is brought out the real advocacy, how they are doing it with the various, the government and other stakeholders part. And also, I think we, again, Shefali bringing out some core component of the programming with regard to child protection. And as she also brought up, it's not the child issues, be all emergencies are probably the same, but in this case, it's migrant situation also here in post-COVID is also that maybe the issues and program approaches may be same. But I would say the entire scale of it is different, and the entire scale of it is alarming. And also the time, its scale is not only the number and geographic spread, also time duration in which we're looking at this, that how it's uprooting and disrupting the existing coping mechanism and the protection mechanism which were in place. They all got disrupted in this movement. And if I hear some of the panelists say that we are expecting now migrants to come back to cities again, so another disruption will happen. And all this disruption is impacting the child and the child sport mechanisms. I think we look at that. And also the complexity of it is, I think Shefali touched about this, is there is in all this geography we are seeing it. We have already seen a couple of cyclones. It's the beginning of monsoons. Most of these cities, our floodplains will be flooded now, and the cities will see floods. And it's these people only, again, migrant people happen to live in those parts of the cities, and also in their rural hinterland also. The other part of the places they live is the ones which get most affected by these disasters. So there is going to be another set of a disruption we're going to see. And I think what we also, I guess, some very interesting conversation from Saurabh. I think the startups and the role, I think to me, really personally very exciting. I think we look at the new ideas and new ways of working. And yes, and that's what we perhaps the solutions are. Everybody is doing their bit. I think everybody, I hear a very excellent field experience from Manjeet. I think is that okay. So everybody, I think, is putting in their bits, including government. We may be critical about a lot of ways, about our advocacy may become critical also at times, but government, everybody is putting their bits and pieces. But where I miss up something is how we are doing it collectively, right? All of us together as civil society, as government, as corporate, individuals, academia, media, all of us together are collectively moving forward on this enormous problem and issues in front of us, right? Have we been able to quantify and qualify these problems, holistically, to look at quantify? For example, if I'm going again is with the help of the way Saurabh was putting, and I'm articulated in that terms, have we been able to quantify these in terms of exact needs, exact actions for holistically for everything to be done? And are we in a position to see that what is being done and what is not being done? which geographies there is work happening and which geographies, there is still nobody is going on. There are remote hinterlands, perhaps there are places, which become absolutely unapproachable in this season. Otherwise also, but in this season, a lot of places will absolutely become unapproachable. And then we heard a bit about the caste issues, the exclusion issues, and all those things. So a large issues of access and all things come up. So have you been able to look at this whole thing holistically and see what's being happening and what's not being happening? I think that's a role, one of the which Sphere India, I would say, strive and struggles to do. Absolutely, we struggle to achieve that. I think we've not been able to work around that. But in the absence of this kind of a mechanism of a coordination, expected to be led by the government, expected to be led by the right departments and ministries within the government, who bring up this kind of a picture, this kind of clarity, so that as stakeholders we know in terms of our roles, but we also see our roles in terms of geography and where the unreached vulnerability issues are, so we address them. I think that kind of a mechanism is missing, and one of our effort of bringing all these webinars and stakeholders together is that we build this collective consciousness of working towards that. And in this kind of, there we have a role for everybody. I think again, all the stakeholders, as I was saying, they're already putting in their bit. There's need to be more coordination among them, and also we come up with our collective accountability. So it's not about collective, not about putting up a collaboration and seeing it, but also a collective accountability. I think is in all the webinars we hear and we do, and the exercise we do is, where are we bringing the voices of the people, affected people themselves, So are we listening adequately to the affected communities? Are we listening to children, those children we're talking about? I think, and for that, what kind of a tools and mechanism we can create, to, so that we can ever directly hear the feedbacks or the voices from the children, to look at their children, affected children and migrant communities here, and then turn around our programming and our actions around that as civil society, but also advocate to the government to listen to these voices and turn around their solutions around that. I think that's another component of accountability which we need to build into it, and put up some real good benchmark performance. I think if I use a corporate, I put up some performance management benchmarking here, some result based management we need to bring in here. And yes, we, to find out the real solutions, we need to work around more startups, innovations, solution exchanges, which addresses this, which in a currently the needs which are more emergency needs in a more holistic manner, but also we start looking in terms of a long-term resilience, so that's it's moving away from a absolutely disaster management or disaster relief and response to, pre-disasters. We start anticipating these things and start taking correctives, so that next time or any such issues we have to face less and less in time to come. So we start putting up our focus on resilience building and risk reduction mechanisms. So that's a discussion we need to start taking up along with these works. So I think I'll end it here. It's also about the coming to the time, and it's more important we hear some of the questions also from the participants. And I thanks thanks all the panelists. I thanks Cry for some excellent sessions you have put up in collaboration with us. We're happy to see this collaboration going on. Back to you. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Vikrant. The partnership has absolutely been amazing. I just want to, because I think this was yours was like a perfect ending in some senses, because you've said some really important things, from the criticality of listening to communities, to reaching the last child, to looking at innovation. Focus on building resilience of these communities. And you also emphasized how it's critical now to build this coordination between key stakeholders. So thank you for that, Vikrant. I'm going to just ask a few questions that has come from the audience next. From Anthony, Vivek, to everyone, do we have a state-wise registration process for migrants seeking employment in a state? And are these efforts taken by any organizations or group to facilitate safe migration and monitoring their living standards? Which of our panelists would like to take this? Katyayani ma'am, is that something that you can address? or anybody?
Yes, as I already mentioned in my talk, the laws prescribe registration of all the workers. But the thing is, it is not happening.
Yeah, it's
So
not implemented.
we,
Correct.
the civil society has to ensure that wherever there is a labor camp or where they know that migrants are coming, they should ensure that they are registered as per the laws. And once they are registered, we can demand that the benefits should reach them. So
Mm. Mm.
I think civil society also has to do some awareness building among the laborers about their rights, and only then they will be able to access the benefits.
Absolutely. Okay, so this question comes from Stephen Paul. Please share policy of migrant children in Karnataka and government orders, employers' duty to enroll children in Anganwadi centers. I think this is a point that Katayani, you again had highlighted also, right?
Yes, he has given his email ID. I think I will send the policy to him.
Okay, great,
Yeah.
great. From Satyavan Shekhawat to everyone, do you have any views on the child protection committees mandated through guidelines in each states but not implemented everywhere? Does anybody have on the child protection committees?
Let me just take this.
Yeah.
Yes, it is true there are child protection committees at the district level. At the panchayat level, child protection committees, or they are alternatively also called child protection units, are there. In some states, there are children groups called Raju Meena Manch in schools which are linked with these. Um, uh, as much as we would like these all to be functional, the primary thing is the stigma that children face. Being in this field, we have tried out to bring out these issues when there has been an incident, but more often than not, the child who is the victim is further victimized when the case comes out. So case management has been, we have not been very good at case management in spite of the Women and Child Welfare Department taking the case management quite forward. The protection of the child is very important. Their awareness needs to be there at every level on how to handle these cases. That is why we have made a lot of efforts to help the police understand on the sensitivity of this issue, help the media understand on the sensitivity of this issue. The advocates need to understand the acts that are there in related to child protection, particularly child abuse, the POXO acts, the JJ acts. There is very less awareness at each of these levels. Then these cases are very immaturely handled. And that is where the problem lies. That is on one side of it. On the other side is the stigma. From my experience, it took us 3 months to counsel and encourage a child to even tell about what happened to their mother, to its mother. So if that is the kind of stigma that even after the mother knew, she didn't want to come out, she didn't want to take it up with her husband. So that is a kind of stigma that we're talking about today. These are the things that have to be addressed for anything to move forward, because we have child protection committees right now, we have child protection units. In some places, we have it at the village level, not just the panchayat, but at the village level. But this will only be functional if all these other actors also come and play their roles. That becomes very important from my experience.
Okay, thank you very much. Navida, do we have time for more questions?
I think we've taken chat questions, but we must also take one or two live questions. So
okay,
I can see that Naveen Narayan has raised his hand. So I'll try to unmute you from my end. Kindly, sir, you can ask your question. I've unmuted you.
Yeah. So, can I speak? Yeah. Are you able to listen me properly? Yeah. My name is Naveen Narayan. I'm speaking from the Jaipur, Rajasthan. I also worked with the Migrants long ago. So my I am touching the different kind of childrens, those who are living in Rajasthan, Here they have been called Ghumantu community, that is denotified communities. And before that, one speaker also touched the stigma, and absolutely stigma, and beyond that is the discrimination and exclusion is purely based on the social identity. Those the 32 such communities are still lots of problems. They cannot prove themselves that they are the citizen on the papers. So how we can going to address the issues of these kind of children? So they are roaming here and there, they are begging, they are not properly having any kind of facilities, even the food. So how we can do something on that? It is also a lots of concern in that. Definitely, because I also worked with the Bikram Saab long years ago in the Rajasthan, the emergency issues. So still popping up this kind of emergencies again, they're taking shape. Thanks.
Thank you, Naveen, for that question. Is there anybody who would like to answer? He's also talking about social exclusion and stigma surrounded. So anyone from the panelists can answer that.
Maybe a part of it. Can I try, Karina?
Yeah, sure. Please go ahead.
Okay. So thanks, Naveen. I think I'm also remembering you, though there were more than one Naveen I worked in Rajasthan. But I think the question of any exclusion, yeah, that's what they say. And you talked about the nomadic communities perhaps also, and the exclusion and the exploitation, especially in Rajasthan and more probably appropriate in Bundelkhand region, the exploitation, sexual exploitation, other exploitation issues around those communities are there. Yes, these are some of the inherent challenges within the social structures and the context of our community we work in. And while there have been there has been a lot of positive, I would say, development in terms of these communities themselves understanding their rights, and also in terms of civil society actors and other actors coming up, who working around that with them, uh, including the government, within the government systems also, apart from the laws which were enabling them. I've seen there has been progress, a positive development around this. But yes, we all know that the political landscape and other things, the way it have changed, is changing rapidly over last few years. It's also posing up the new challenges around that. So somewhere we all are working and gripping around these issues. And when it comes to the issues of the disasters, and the same disasters are repeating again, is again there again, if I'm seeing, analyze the trends, while there have been a lot of positive works happening, but somewhere all our efforts, positive efforts, are actually trailing the negative impacts of the environment exploitation and all other pieces which we're seeing around, right? So when you're pointing out to these issues, is you're right. And the question is, I think the only way I see we do address is perhaps we all need to do more, and we all need to do more with more collective thinking and collective planning to address the root issues a lot. That goes back to the discussion on the resilience building and promoting resilience, and within the communities, and more community-led mechanisms, more. And in this discussion, I would say more child-led mechanisms. We do see that, and that perhaps is where my optimism and my conviction lies, in seeing most appropriate solutions. Over.
Thank you, Vikrant.
So Priyan, I think that was the last question we took because we already exceeded a bit of the time.
Okay.
So I'll just take couple of minutes to do a bit of logistic announcement at the end, and then we'll end the session.
Okay.
Is my screen visible?
Yes.
So this is for all the participants who attend our session. We also give certificate of participation to all the participants. The certificate will be ready for this particular discussion after 24 hours. So this is a website which is www.spearindiacovid19academy.org. You can visit the website after 24 hours and look for the course. the same name, which is Children of Migrants, and you can download your certificate by entering the details. In past, we have received a lot of queries, and there were few technical glitches wherein participants could not download their certificate. If you face any such kind of problem, you can write to us at COVID-19 Academy at spearindia.org.in, and we'll try to resolve that for you. So with this, I would really like to thank all the panelists. It was a really enriching discussion today. And thank you, Priyan, for that amazing moderation and keeping us time intact as well. Thank you to all the participants for attending the session. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening, and we'll meet in the next session.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Navila. Thank you, Kriyan. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
I will like to put on record my thanks once again for CRY for a wonderful series, and we look forward to seeing the works ahead.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Sphere and CRY, for giving us this opportunity. It was wonderful listening to everybody.
Thank you. Bye all.
Thanks. Bye.